Hi, this is Sean O'Toole with Foreclosure Radar's California Foreclosure Report for July 2010. Foreclosure filings were down this month. Notices of default down almost 5% to 25,148. Notices of trustee sale down almost 19% to 28,310. Not quite sure why there's such a big drop in the notices of trustee sale. Maybe we haven't worked through all those cancellations we had last month. One thing I do know for sure, no foreclosure wave coming anytime soon. Keep hearing people talk about foreclosure wave and shadow inventory. Yes, there are a lot of delinquencies out there. They're not moving into foreclosure, and they're a year or more away from hitting the streets as REOs. If you're worried about a foreclosure wave, don't worry about it anytime soon. Now, looking at foreclosure outcomes, we saw cancellations drop almost 14% to about 19,000 foreclosure sales canceled. This is a big drop from the prior month, but remember the big jump from last month was largely one lending institution, JP Chase. That was probably a one-time event where they cleared out a bunch of old files or maybe put a bunch of folks into a new program. That seems to have slowed back down. We're back at the levels we had been at, months prior. So it's probably a one-time event, and that's why we're seeing the big drop this month. Now, those going back to the bank and sold to the third party, both up. The number of foreclosure sales on the courthouse steps up. Number of properties back to the bank up about 13.5% to just under 12,000. And those sold to third parties up almost 17% after a big drop last month. So we're definitely seeing improvements on that front. If you're an auction investor, we're seeing a little bit more deal flow again this month, which is good. But again, we're at very, very low levels of foreclosure sales, given the number of folks that are in the foreclosure process, given the number of folks that aren't making their homeowner payments. Still a very constrained market thanks to government and lender intervention. Now, foreclosure inventories were down across the board this month. Pre-foreclosures down 20%. It's a big drop, but you have to keep in mind how we calculate this. We look at the length of time it takes for a notice of trustee sale to be filed after a notice of default, and we look back that period of time and see how many notices were actually filed. This month, that time frame compressed quite a bit. Lenders were quicker to file notices of trustee sale, so we see a drop in our pre-foreclosure inventory level. Number of properties scheduled for sale down 4% to around 125,000 properties that can be sold basically at their next sale date with no further notice. And that was because we saw the drop in notices of trustee sale, while at the same time seeing an increase in the number of properties sold on the courthouse steps. Finally, the bank-owned inventories, they're down only slightly, but the banks continue to resell more properties than they take back on the courthouse steps. Foreclosure discounts at the auctions continue to improve for investors. This month, the average discount for market value for investors was almost 22%. That's up from a low a few months back of just about 16%. So it's a pretty good improvement. To understand why some properties go to investors and some properties go back to the bank, look at the average discount of those that went back to the bank, 21% above market value. Of course, investors aren't buying those. Now, there is a big difference we're finding in the discount by location. In Orange County, for example, we see discounts of only around 15.3% for market value on average. Fresno, on the other hand, discounts of almost 30% on average. Big difference depending on area, and it's not always the coast versus the inland. Up north we see larger discounts in Alameda than we see in San Joaquin. So varies a lot by county. Finally, looking at foreclosure timeframes, banks were a little bit quicker to foreclose, down a few days to 226 days from the filing of a notice of default to the sale on the courthouse steps, taking banks just slightly longer than the previous month to resell, but auction investors saw some improvements. It's taking them a few days less, about 4% less time to resell their inventory than it has in the last month. So a little bit of improvement there for auction investors, not only in discounts, but also in the time to resell. Good news for auction investors, still a tough market down there though. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Foreclosure Radar's California Foreclosure Report. Until next time.